Hello, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are watching from. Good afternoon, good evening to you. Welcome to this webinar. I'm very, very happy to be here on behalf of English Quest. We will wait for another 2 minutes just to wait for people to join. So we'll just give a couple of minutes to give people an opportunity to join this webinar, this live stream from English Quest. My name is Charlotte McCormick. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at English Quest, and I'm going to be taking you through some tips and some strategies and talk to you a little bit about our curriculum. But as I say, I'll just wait for 2 minutes or so just to let some more people join. I wonder if you're joining from classrooms or if you are at home now. Some of you might have joined on the train on the way home. But wherever you're joining from, if you're joining from Hyderabad or Mumbai, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. If you're joining from Tirupati, or Sakleshpura, Chennai, Bangalore, Ulhasnagar, Thane, wherever you're joining us from, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. I know that someone's probably joined from Vizag, so welcome to you, sir. So as I said, so I can see that a few more people are now joining. We've got about 36 of us so far. So I'll just wait for a few more minutes, a few more moments, not minutes, don't worry, and then we'll make a start. So we'll just wait another minute or so just to make sure that nobody misses out, and but I won't punish the punctual people. I won't keep you waiting for too long before we make a start. So yes, again, just to say, my name is Charlotte McCormick. I am the Chief Learning Officer at English Quest, and I just wanted to say a very, very warm welcome to all of you joining this afternoon, this evening. So I think what we will do is we'll make a start and then we'll see how many more people join us. As a teacher myself, I know just how busy your lives are as teachers. It's exceptionally busy being a teacher. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for joining. I'm also very, very grateful and understanding that you have a huge workload with lots and lots of plates on the sticks. So I'm very, very grateful to those of you who have joined this evening. And also I want to commend you all for joining because it shows a commitment to your own development, your own professional development, your own learning, and therefore your commitment to your students, your commitment to learning outcomes. So I really do commend you all for joining, for giving up your time, which is extremely precious, to talk with me this evening. So let's make a start then. As I said, my name is Charlotte McCormick. I am from the UK. Perhaps some of you could tell from my accent. I am from the UK. I am the Chief Learning Officer at English Quest, and I have got just over 15 years of experience in education. Initially as an English teacher. So I am a trained English teacher. And then I became a school leader in central London. So I co-founded a high school, a secondary school in central London. And I ran that for a number of years before joining English Quest as the Chief Learning Officer. So that's a little bit about me. You can see my daughter here. I have a 2-year-old daughter who I shall try not to let her interrupt this afternoon, but I can't promise anything. I also have 2 dogs who may also vocally make an appearance on this call. So again, I apologise in advance if I have my 2 territorial dogs making their presence known in this webinar. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about English Quest. English Quest is a UK company. We operate across the world, and we operate primarily in India nationally. So we work in across the country, Mumbai, Bangalore, Tirupati, Hyderabad, Chennai. So I'm not sure where you're joining us from, but just to say a huge welcome to all of you. If you're joining from any part of the country, I am actually wearing my tunic, which I bought in Hyderabad to honor the Indian culture. So I want to say a little bit about English Quest, and then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about in this session. So English Quest, as I say, we are a UK company. We are trying to solve the spoken English challenge. You will know far better than I do the challenge that schools, parents, families, school leaders, teachers face with learning English, specifically the spoken English challenge. What we tend to see in schools is that children are stronger on reading and writing, but less confident in their spoken English. And that's what we aim to fix. We are here to fix the spoken English problem in schools across the world. We have a huge challenge with a billion children wanting to learn English across the world. And many children don't have access to excellent English lessons, excellent English teachers. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix that. So we work in partnership with schools. We provide an international curriculum. We train the teachers in those schools how to deliver that curriculum. With the ultimate aim of developing and creating confident and fluent speakers of English. So today's session, I'm going to talk to you in 2 parts. The first part, I'm going to talk to you about the curriculum and our curriculum, our international curriculum called DICE, which is Direct Instruction Spoken English. So I'm going to talk to you a little about the power of that curriculum and why it is so successful for learners of English. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our curriculum and why it works and why it makes confident and fluent speakers of English. And then the second thing I'm going to talk to you about is some strategies and some tips on how you can teach the curriculum well. The first part of those strategies I'll talk about is in response to observations. So if you are a teacher that already works with English Quest and you're already teaching those lessons, you will know that we have program managers who will come into your school regularly to observe your lessons and to provide coaching and feedback and support for your lessons. So in response to the observations that we have conducted, we have taken some of those things that the program managers have identified as areas that we can support you further in. What we've done is I'm going to take those things and talk to you a little bit about how you can address those things in your classroom. And then I'm going to talk more generally about other ways in which you can deliver these lessons, but also not just for our lessons, but for other lessons. So they're more general teaching tips and teaching strategies that can help you in your classroom practice. So that's the first. We're going to talk firstly about the curriculum itself. Then I'm going to talk about some specific strategies that we've identified that you can have our support in further, and then talk about some more general strategies that you can employ for your teaching. What I would suggest is that you, I think if any of my colleagues are on the webinar, they will know that I always have a pen in my hand and I always use paper. I'm very analog in that sense. So please, I would recommend if you are a digital note taker, I would recommend making some digital notes, or if you are a pen and paper person like I am, I would recommend having a pen and paper handy so that you can take some notes about the tips. After the webinar, the program managers will also be sharing a summary of the tips and the strategies that I've talked about in this session. And so they will be able to share that with you in case there's anything that you've missed or you've had to dip out for other commitments. So just to let you know, make sure that you've got some note-taking equipment handy, but also I'll be sending a summary of some of the things that we've discussed in the webinar. And then finally, I will provide some time at the end and I will enable the chat function for the last 15 minutes of the session, where you can ask me some questions and I can clear any doubts that you have about the program or about the teaching strategies that we've talked about. Okay, so in terms of the curriculum itself, we use a curriculum called Direct Instruction Spoken English, DICE. It's an international curriculum originating in the United States. Now, the reason why it's called Direct Instruction Spoken English is because the teaching methodology that we use is direct instruction. And the reason why the curriculum has adopted and uses direct instruction as the teaching methodology, because we know that out of all of the teaching methodologies, all of the ways to impart knowledge and to teach learners, we know that direct instruction has the most powerful impact on learners. It has the greatest impact on learning outcomes using direct instruction. So direct instruction itself, the reason why we know that this works was in the United States, a research project was conducted called Project Follow Through, which you can all research if you'd like to do some wider reading on why direct instruction is so powerful. But the project called Project Follow Through was a study that was conducted in the United States where they were researching which teaching methodologies and approaches had the greatest impact on student outcomes. And by far and away, the biggest and the most effective way to teach and for students to learn is through direct instruction. And so the methodology that our curriculum is founded on, and so the foundations of our curriculum is using the most impactful teaching methodology. So I just wanted to give you some idea about direct instruction. And then in terms of how our curriculum works, if you have already started teaching our program, you will have seen this in practice. And if you haven't started, this is what you can expect once you do start. So we approach teaching English in the same way that you would learn your mother tongue. So let me take a specific example for a personal example. So when I learned English, which is my mother tongue, I learned to speak English first and foremost in my home. It was really my parents that took charge of teaching me how to speak. And so what they did was they spoke to me in fluent, grammatically correct, full sentences in English. They spoke to me in that fluent, correct language. I would listen to that. They would often point at something to make me understand. So, for example, they would say, bottle, this is a bottle. And then I would use this strategy of dual coding, where my parents would show me something and then my brain would encode the information whilst hearing the word bottle. So they would say, here's the image, and then they would say, this is a bottle. And then that's how I would encode that information. And then what would happen is if I was to make a mistake, my parents would immediately correct me. So if I was to say pottle, my parents would say, no, bottle. And then I would say bottle. And so it works in this way where when you're learning your mother tongue, my parents weren't sitting with me and saying, today, Charlotte, we're going to learn nouns. And a noun is this, and the definition, here are examples of nouns. That wouldn't make me a fluent speaker of English. What they did was they modeled correct, grammatically correct, fluent, full sentences. They asked me to repeat it, to check that I'd understood it. And if I made a mistake, they would correct that mistake immediately. And then I would say the correct answer to create that accountability that, yes, she's understood what I've taught her. And so that's how I learned English. I also learned it through being immersed in that language. My parents were only speaking English to me. They weren't speaking another language and then translating the parts that they wanted me to learn. They were speaking to me only in English, and then I would only respond in English. And this is what some of the mistakes that are made with English language learning is that, let's take, for example, a school that might be teaching English and the teacher is speaking Hindi for the English lesson and then translating the words of English that they want the students to learn. Those students won't become fluent in that language because they'll only know that vocabulary isolated from the rest of the language. And so it's really important that we have this immersive experience. And that's how you build confidence and fluency in a language. And so when we talk about learning English as in the same way that you've acquired your mother tongue, that's what we mean. We mean there is an expert speaker modeling those correct answers and those correct sentences to you. They are speaking in full sentences. You are only hearing and speaking that language. In this case, it's English. And so you are fully immersed in it. And then the final stage is that you are being corrected immediately. So whereas in a traditional classroom setting, the students might complete an exercise, for example, but then the teacher will check that at a much later date. There isn't that immediate correction. And therefore, because there's that delay, there's the risk that they are compounding the incorrect information. So in our classes, the students speak, and then if they make a mistake, the teacher corrects them immediately. So that's really important. The other thing that's incredibly important, if you want to learn a language to speak it fluently, you need to practice. You need to speak. And very often what we found in traditional classroom settings is the teacher, it's very didactic, which means the teacher is speaking for the entire lesson and telling the students, and the students are listening, but they're not able to practice. So our English lessons, the students are speaking as much as the teacher. So there is a 50-50 ratio where the teacher is speaking, the student responds. Teacher speaks, students respond. And that gives the teacher an opportunity to hear what the students are saying, what, if any, mistakes are being made, and then they're given the opportunity to correct those mistakes and then give that feedback in the live moment that they make that mistake. So those are the kind of approaches that we use in terms of learning the mother tongue. There's another important aspect. I spoke about dual coding, where your family would say, this is a bottle, and then you would say it. That idea of dual coding means that you remember the information much more effectively. So what we have in our lessons, as many of you will know, you have images on the board, and then the teacher is speaking. And that way the students are encoding that information and committing that language to their long-term memory. So that's something that's important for our program. The teacher is speaking, and then the visuals are up on the board so that the students encode that information. Another strategy, using learning science to make sure that the students remember this information, is we use something called spaced repetition. So many of the teachers on this webinar listening now, you will have noticed that the scripts, you will have exercises that are repeated in either a next lesson or a number of lessons in the future after. The reason why we have that spaced repetition is because the more often you hear something, the more likely it is that you will remember it. And so I can ask all of you now to say out loud whilst you're watching this, if you're not somewhere in public, but if you're able to say it out loud, say your telephone number, your own telephone number, say it out loud now. I'll give you a few seconds to say your own telephone number. So my own telephone number, 84758186. And so everybody, I'm sure you are all able to do that very, very easily without thinking about it. The reason why you're able to do that is because you've repeated it often. It means that that is now committed to your long-term memory. And that's what we want to do with our English language learners. We want them to be able to speak automatically. We don't want them translating from their mother tongue, from their native language. We want them to be able to speak English automatically. And the way that you do that is by repeating over a spaced period of time. So you'll hear something for the first time, it's very unlikely that you'll remember that. The only way that you'll remember that is if you bring it back to your short-term memory, repeat it, and then it will be committed to your long-term memory. So those are some things about the lessons, some aspects of our lessons that make it so powerful. Now, in terms of strategies for teaching, how to teach it well, something that we've picked up in observations is that there is a need for you to praise students more often. Now, it's important because you want to keep the pace of the lesson high, and you want to make sure that you're building momentum through the lesson. So you don't want to take too much time out of the lesson to be spending too much time praising children. That was excellent, well done, didn't you do a great job? What you just need to do is, after you've finished one of your sentences, so for example, what is this? They say, this is a dog. Good. What is this? This is a car. Good. And so you're doing it very, very quickly. You're not taking time out of the lesson. You're still building momentum and pace in the lesson, but you're not taking too much time. But for the students, hearing you praising them and making sure that they are on the right track, that they know that they're getting things correct, it will build that motivation in class. And so when you want, it's part of a behavior management technique as well. If you want to build motivation with your students, giving that quick praise is going to be really, really important to building motivation, to making sure that the children are alert and listening. So a reminder just to praise your students, but keep it very short. It can be monosyllabic, so it can be a one-syllable word, good, great, nice. And so just quickly building that in. The second thing that we picked up in observations is making sure that you are correcting all the mistakes. Our curriculum works on a building block frame. And so what will happen, you'll have seen in the early lessons, those of you that are teaching in the early lessons, so starting from lesson 1, lesson 2, what you'll see is it will introduce a single word. So for example, if it was introducing dog, the visual will be on the board, dog. The students will learn the word dog on its own. Then they will learn the word dog with the article attached to it. So it would be a dog. So then that will build up to the sentence. So then it would be, what is this? This is a dog. And so our curriculum, each lesson, it builds on prior knowledge. And so they are building blocks of knowledge. And so if the students make a mistake in the early part of the lessons, if there are any mistakes made, it means that the foundations are not strong. So what's important is if you hear the students make a mistake or if they miss out a word, it's very important that you correct that mistake immediately to make sure that you're not building the knowledge of English on a shaky foundation. And so, for example, something that I've seen in lots of classrooms is when the teacher says, what is this? And the children say dog, the teacher needs to correct them and say a dog, and putting the emphasis on the mistake that they made. They missed out the article, so they need to put the emphasis on the part that they made the mistake on. So what is this? They say dog, you say a dog, and making sure that they've got that mistake corrected immediately, because then you can build up from there. If you don't correct all of the mistakes, it means that when they start building those sentences, they will miss vital parts of the sentence. So for example, what is this? Dog. When they learn the full sentence, they will say, this is dog. And so then what we're doing is we're building the language with incorrect grammatical foundations. So start at the foundation level and really make sure that you've corrected all of those mistakes to make sure that you've got very, very strong foundations in those sentence structures. So that's the second thing. So first thing, praising. Second thing, making sure that you're correcting all of those mistakes. And then the other thing that we've noticed from observations is students not responding together at the same time. So using those hand signals and whatever you've agreed with the program manager or whatever you've agreed with your trainers on what hand signals to use, whatever those signals are, make sure you really enforce those so that your students are speaking together at the same time. So what is this? Wait. Or what is this? Get ready. A dog, for example. So using deliberate hand signals or verbal signals, whatever you've agreed. So we normally would say, get ready, and then they say the answer. But using deliberate hand signals to show the students when they should respond and when they should keep quiet, to make sure that all of the students are answering together. That's really, really important. So making sure you're using your hands deliberately to control when the students are speaking and when they are listening. So you'll always have, this is a universal matter, where you'll always have some students who want to shout out more often than others. So using hand signals. You can also use verbal cues like get ready, wait. So using hand signals and verbal cues to make sure that your students are responding at the same time. That's really important. And then for the third part of what I wanted to talk about was talking about some general tips and general strategies for not only teaching DICE, but also for teaching in general. The pace and the energy of the lessons, it needs to be high. That doesn't mean you should be speaking quickly. It just means that you should be having very short pauses between what you say and what you expect the students to say, and then what you follow on with. So, what is this? Students say, this is a dog. What is this? This is a cat. What is this? This is a table. What is this? This is a chair. So keeping this rhythm really, really upbeat, and making sure that there isn't a pause whilst I fully appreciate you're looking at what you need to say, whilst pointing at the visuals, whilst looking at the students. So like in any teaching scenario, you've got lots of plates on the sticks in one moment. However, it's really important that you try to keep those pauses and those transitions really, really tight to keep the energy of the class up. If you're taking long pauses after each sentence, what is this? This is a dog. What is this? This is a cat. What is this? The energy goes straight down because you've got this dead time and this dead space where the energy of the class drops. Whereas if you keep the momentum going by having these very short pauses, short, tight transitions between each of the sentences, it will build the momentum of your class. And speaking about momentum and pace in the lesson, really, really be careful with how you use individual turns. Individual turns is what we mean when we ask one student to give us the answer. What we don't want to do is, number one, give lots of individuals turns on each exercise. Because what happens when you're doing a call and response type exercise where you're getting the whole class response, that will build momentum and energy in a class. The moment that you stop that whole class response and go to an individual, the energy drops immediately out of that class. So what you need to do is be really, really careful with how you use those individual terms. So the majority of the lesson should be whole class response. And then if the script directs you to take two students, keep the students in their seat. Don't bring them to the front of the classroom, because again, that's taking up learning time and it's making the energy drop. And then it makes it much harder to build that energy back up again, because the student has to walk to the front of the classroom. Then everybody's sitting, waiting. Then you do that. Then they go back and the children are still waiting. So this dead time in the classroom where there's no energy, that's giving the children any opportunity to become disengaged, distracted, look out of the window, look to their friend. So that's why it's very important with the individual turns. Limit them, so only use them when the script directs you to do so, but also do it very, very infrequently. So when you're doing that, make sure that you're building the whole class response. And then when you choose the individual to have a go, make sure that you don't expect them to come to the front of the classroom. I understand that it is often taught in your schools that students should stand up when a teacher addresses them individually. If that's the policy and the structure of your school, then please maintain that structure. But they can just do it standing in their seat. They don't need to come to the front of the classroom. So individual turns, limit them. So only do it when the script directs you to, but also make sure the students remain in their seat, or where, they can be standing there, but remain there. Don't come to the front, because as I've said, you're doing a whole class response. The energy will drop very, very quickly the minute you do an individual turn. And so it's your job to get it back up to whole class response and build that energy again very, very quickly. So that's what I wanted to say about individual turns. Another tip that you can do to build a bit of variety into the class responses is that often in your classrooms, you will separate the girls and the boys. if you're teaching in a co-ed school. So what you could do in your classrooms is you can get all of the boys to respond, and then you could ask all of the girls to respond. So again, it's creating a bit of variety and texture in your lesson without slowing things down and without causing the energy and the momentum to drop. It also helps to keep the students alert a little bit. So you can go to boys, your turn, girls, your turn. Another thing that you can do is use sides of the classroom, because most of you are in the students are in rows and segregated by an aisle. So you can take one side response, this side response. And so again, it's not slowing the lesson down, but it's giving some variety and texture to the lesson, and keeps the students alert. The other thing that you can do, so we've talked about individual turns, we've talked about tight transitions, we've talked about using sides of the classroom. Another thing that you can do as well is use your body language to create energy in the classroom. So when you're doing gestures, for example, it might be verbs, I am running, you are running. You can also be using your body language to create more fun, more energy in the classroom. And so what you can then do is get the children to also do that. So when it says the girl is running, what's the girl doing? And then everyone can go running, for example, or the girl is walking. Everybody do walking. So you can use these body language. You can use your body language. You can use hand gestures to create more animation, more energy in the classroom. And so then the children will have a little bit more activity, a little bit more energy, but you're not detracting, you're not taking away from the learning. And that's what's really important, to keep focused on the script, to make sure that you're building momentum and you're not losing learning time. So using hand gestures, running, walking, waving, smiling, you can do all of those with your body without having to slow the lesson down. And then the final strategy that I wanted to share with you, the final one is about knowing your students. You know your students, what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. If you find in your classroom that one of the exercises that you are doing, the students are already confident with that topic. For example, lots of children know how to count to 10. And in our curriculum, at the very, very beginning of the curriculum, the children learn how to count to 10. If you already know that your students can already count to 10, skip the exercise. So that's also really important for you as a teacher, and you know your students the best. If you know that they're able to do something very confidently already, please have the freedom and flexibility to skip the exercise. Don't skip an exercise because the children have found it more challenging. That's the exercise that you need to spend time on. But if you find that exercises are more straightforward, or the students already know the information, skip the exercise, and please feel empowered to do that. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to open the chat so that you're able to ask me some questions. But just to summarize in terms of what I've talked about in terms of strategies. First thing, use quick praise. So good, excellent, nice, good job. So just keeping it very, very quick. We're not spending lots of time on that, just building the motivation of the students. So quick praise. Make sure you correct all the mistakes that the children make. So if you hear a mistake, don't let it go unchecked. Make sure you correct that mistake there and then, because as I talked about, you're building those foundations, and the curriculum works in such a way that builds foundations. And so if you build your language on a shaky foundation, you're not going to build fluency. Make sure all of the children answer together by using hand signals, verbal cues. Keep the pace and the energy up by using tight transitions. Use sides of the classroom to create some variety. Be dramatic and energetic with your hand gestures, and then skip at any exercises that you think that the students are already confident with. So I'm now going to, if you just give me one moment, I'm just going to enable the chat if I'm able to. So just give me one moment and I'm going to do that now. Let me just have a look here. Sorry, just give me one moment, please, whilst I work out how to do it. Okay, so I think, I believe my colleague Mohan has enabled the chat. So if anybody would like to ask me any questions about the programme, about the curriculum, about how we work in partnership with schools, anything that you would like to ask me, Mohan has told me that the chat is enabled, but I can't see the chat. Let me just clarify. If it's not appearing for you, you can refresh the page. So if you can't see the chat, please do refresh. Okay, so let's see if I can see the chat function. Can't see anything yet. Let me just check with my colleague to see if I can enable the chat. Okie dokes. I can't actually see for some reason. I can't see. That's a shame. Let me see. Sorry, just give me one moment whilst I try to. I'm hoping. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm just trying to work out how I can see, because I believe that the chat has been enabled for you. If you want to refresh your page, that should allow it to appear for you. But unfortunately, I can't see it right now. So I'll just, 1 second. I'm just trying, let's have a look. I'm just working it out. For some reason, it has not appeared. So I'm very sorry about that, everyone. Let me see. I'm just trying to click something that won't let me click. Let me click manage. So I'm not entirely sure why that's happened, I'm afraid. But what I will be doing, if I can't sort this issue now, what I will be doing is I will be sharing a summary of what I've talked about in this webinar. So what I will do is I'll share a kind of crib sheet of the tips and strategies that I've shared in this channel. I will be doing another webinar, and I'll make sure that we can fix the chat function for that. What we will do, that will be on Monday, the 16th of October. So the 16th of October, one for your diaries. So Monday, the 16th of October, we will be looking at some videos of exemplar teaching. So we'll be looking at some of our outstanding teachers across the country. We'll look at some examples of those. And then we'll also be talking about how to provide feedback. Great, Mohan is able to share the chat with me from Slack. So give me one moment. What I'll just let you know. So the next session is about providing feedback and coaching for others. So for your own professional development, knowing how to coach and to give feedback. And that will be on Monday, the 16th of October. So my colleague Mohan very kindly is sending me the chat. So question, if some children are responding immediately after you give the signal, but one or two students are not even trying to say, what would you do in that case? Minakshi, that's a question from Minakshi. Thank you so much. Great question. So if you've got some children who are responding immediately, but one or two students are not saying anything, reinforce that behavior management, reinforce those expectations. So hand signals, everybody get ready. If they don't do that, you wait. You say, everyone, and you make sure that there's no opt-out. So there's a practitioner called Doug Lemov who talks about different teaching strategies for behavior management. And Doug Lemov says there's no opt-out. So it means that the students can't opt into the parts of the lesson that they want to and opt out. There's no opt-out. So you need to make sure that with the hand signals, you give them the chance to do it. If they don't do it, you make sure that they do it the next time. You don't move forward until everyone has done that. You must reinforce the expectation that everybody responds together. And so then if you find, for example, that you say, okay, everybody get ready, and then everyone responds, and you see that, let's say, the children in this section are not, that's when you can use your sides, your sections. So then you can go, okay, get ready, and then they respond. And then you can drill it down to make sure that there's absolutely no opt-out. It's really important that you don't let disengagement or non-compliance or non-participation, don't let that slide. Don't let that become part of your teaching. So maintaining those high expectations that everybody participates. If it's a question of one individual who's just not trying, then go to an individual turn, make sure they say it. And obviously then you can use your behavior management systems that you use in your school, whether it's a demerit or a warning or whatever you have, but making sure that you're not letting that go unnoticed and unchecked. It's really important. So whole class response, if you haven't got a whole class response, do it again. If it's still not, section it, go to that section to make it less isolated. If there's still an individual, do an individual turn with that student. And then, of course, that will trigger, if they're still not responding, that will trigger your behavior management systems for your school. So I hope that helps. Mohan, do we have any other questions? Or let me see, I've just got that question from the chat. Does anyone else have another question? Unfortunately, for some reason, on my side, I can't see the chat, but it's unfortunate that I can't access the chat box. Let me see if there are any more. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here this evening. As I said at the beginning, I appreciate how busy you all are and how much work teachers have. So I really appreciate you being here and giving up your time. As I said, learning, the next training session will be on Monday, the 16th of October. I'll definitely make sure that the chat works for the final part of the session. We'll be looking at coaching, providing feedback, and we'll be watching some videos on how other teachers across the country are performing, and we'll be doing a little bit more interaction in terms of feedback for those teachers. I hope you found it useful, and as I said, I will be providing a summary of the points that I covered in this session, which will go out, look out for them in your WhatsApp groups. Please also feel free, if you will be doing this every month. So if there are other sessions that you would like to take part in, or if there are topics that you would like to receive training on, please speak to the program managers in your area, and please use the WhatsApp groups to put requests in. I'm very happy to provide training on topics that will be useful for you. So yes, please do speak to program managers and request topics for training. As I say, it will happen every month, and the next one will be the 16th of October. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for all joining and participating, and I hope you have a nice evening, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.